"I was not born to endure this." That statement was no accident. It was her wicked nature stripped bare. At a charity event at St. Brigid's Orphanage, when faced with a severely burned little girl, Camilla showed no compassion. Instead, there was only utter disgust and profound selfishness. The charitable queen cared more about her expensive dress and her own cleanliness than the pain of an orphaned child in need of comfort. She believed her selfishness would be covered up by power. But a secret audio recording was covertly made, capturing every single cold, derogatory word. While Catherine embraced the child, Princess Anne held on to this fatal piece of evidence. Will this selfishness mark the end of Camilla's facade? And how will Princess Anne use this tape to bring her down right on the glorious stage of the event? The atmosphere in the intensive care unit of St. Brigid's Orphanage was suffocating. Invisible, yet weighing heavily on the shoulders of everyone present. Along the narrow corridor, the medical staff, security personnel, and VIP guests stood in 2 rows, holding their breath in anticipation. Camera flashes blinked incessantly from the main lobby, casting blinding streaks of light onto the white, fading walls. Camilla appeared at the end of the hallway. She wore a custom-designed silk dress embellished with tiny pearls along the hem, her stiletto heels striking the tiled floor in a rushed, frantic rhythm. Surrounding her was a phalanx of bodyguards and 3 media assistants, who constantly waved their hands to clear the way, creating an absolute safe zone. Camilla's face maintained a perfect, manufactured smile, nodding slightly in response to greetings. But her eyes never settled on anyone. The orphanage director, a woman in her 60s with a submissive demeanor, hurried forward to lead the way. With a trembling hand, she pointed toward the room at the end of the hall, bearing the number 402. A media assistant quickly shoved a carefully red-ribboned teddy bear into Camilla's hands, a prop prepared in advance for tomorrow's front-page photo. Camilla took the bear, but immediately frowned. She held it with 2 fingers, keeping it at a safe distance from her expensive dress, her lips pursed in obvious annoyance. The door to room 402 slowly opened. The smell of antiseptic, medical alcohol, and the metallic tang of open wounds instantly wafted out. Inside the cramped room, little Pearl sat huddled on the white-sheeted hospital bed. Half of her face, her entire left arm, and her neck were tightly wrapped in a maze of bandages, oozing dark red stains of medication. The child looked up with large, round eyes, staring bewildered and terrified at the crowd of strangers thronging the doorway. The moment Camilla's eyes met that tiny, wound-covered body, the manufactured smile on her lips vanished. Every muscle in her face tensed. Without hiding it in the slightest, Camilla jerked backward, taking a full step in retreat and accidentally stepping on the foot of the bodyguard right behind her. She roughly shoved the teddy bear back into the assistant's chest. Camilla raised a hand to cover her nose, her eyes sweeping the room with absolute disgust. Abandoning any sense of restraint, she turned to the director and hissed, her words as sharp as a razor. "I was not born to endure this. It's utterly filthy." The remark was not loud, but in the quiet space of the hospital corridor, it echoed clearly, striking the ears of everyone standing nearby. Little Pearl blinked, shrinking back and pulling the blanket up to cover her nose. The surrounding crowd was stunned. A few doctors exchanged glances, unable to believe what they had just heard. Camilla spun around, intending to stride away, but little did she know that, mingled among the guests in a hidden corner right by the door, A smartphone had already been raised. No flash, no warning sign. The camera lens had perfectly captured every disgusted frown, every cold step backward, and that entire cruel sentence. Panic began to spark among Camilla's assistants. A sharp-eyed PR man realized someone was pointing a phone in their direction. He immediately lunged forward, swinging his arm to snatch the device, loudly demanding that all data be deleted. The crowd began to push and shove, creating a chaotic scene right outside the hospital room. Just as the conflict was about to erupt into violence, a steady voice rang out from the end of the hall. The crowd automatically parted, creating a path. Princess Catherine appeared. She carried no props, no intimidating ring of bodyguards. Catherine took long, resolute steps, marching straight through the chaos, completely ignoring the presence of Camilla, who stood rooted to the spot just a few steps away. Catherine walked through the doorframe of room 402. Without hesitation, she knelt on the cold floor, not caring that her expensive tweed fabric touched the ground. She reached out, gently embracing Pearl's tiny body. Unfazed by the bleeding wounds, Catherine pressed her cheek against the child's sparse hair, her arms stroking the violently trembling back. Her voice rang out, gentle yet carrying immense weight. "It's all right, Princess Pearl, I am here." That moment was like a bucket of cold water splashed right into Camilla's arrogance. A stark contrast was laid bare before dozens of people, one who fled in disgust and another willing to kneel down to protect. The entire hallway sank into a suffocating silence, and then, from hidden corners, rounds of applause began to echo. At first, it was just a few sparse claps. Then, it spread into a wave resounding down the corridor. Camilla stood frozen, her jaw clenched tight. She glared at Catherine with eyes burning with ultimate fury, then turned on her heel and strode swiftly towards the backstage area. She believed her power was enough to extinguish all the whispers, but she had underestimated the strength of the newly recorded evidence. The fuse of an overthrow had officially been lit. The backstage area of the event was completely isolated from the outside by thick velvet curtains. Inside the VIP waiting room, Camilla furiously hurled her designer handbag onto the vanity table. Trailing behind her were two trusted assistants, panting from their hurried sprint. She pulled out several wet wipes, scrubbing her hands vigorously as if trying to scrape off an invisible layer of grime. Camilla turned to unleash her fury on the PR assistant, pointing a finger directly at his face. "Who approved this damn schedule? Who do those bastards think I am, making me crawl into that filthy, disease-ridden hole? Cancel every article related to that room immediately. Not a single word is to leak out." The assistant bowed deeply, sweat beading on his forehead. He hastily reported that the security team had locked down the corridor and forced those present to delete their footage. Camilla sneered, smoothing the folds of her silk dress, her arrogance swiftly returning to her face. She was certain that with the security team's intervention, the recent incident was just a passing breeze, entirely harmless before she stepped out onto the main stage to claim her glory. But little did she know that, outside in the hallway, all efforts at control had utterly collapsed. Princess Anne, who had been quietly observing the entire ordeal from the beginning, hadn't missed a single detail. When Camilla's security guard roughly pinned a guest against the wall to force the deletion of the video, Anne stepped forward. She swatted away the burly bodyguard's arm with unexpectedly forceful strength. Anne stood shielding the guest, her razor-sharp eyes pinning the guard down, ordering him to back off instantly. In one swift motion, the guest managed to hit the share button, sending the video to the event's internal network group before the phone screen was locked. The evidence had slipped out of their control. It wove through mobile devices like an unstoppable contagion. Meanwhile, in the VIP waiting room, the wooden door was suddenly shoved open. Princess Anne strode inside, locking the door herself, trapping Camilla and her two assistants in a confined space. The atmosphere instantly became taut as a bowstring. Anne didn't speak right away. She walked slowly forward, standing opposite Camilla through the large mirror. "Are you planning to take that fake face out there?" Anne broke the silence, her voice cold and entirely devoid of emotion. Camilla stopped applying lipstick, glancing at Anne through the mirror, the corners of her lips twitching into a defiant smile. She turned around, crossing her arms over her chest. "Anne, don't forget who the most anticipated person at this event today is. Those people out there are dying to see me, craving the press releases that I myself bestow." Anne took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "Your presence here is a filthy insult to the royal family and to those children struggling with their pain out there. You have no right to step onto that stage. What gives you the authority to stop me?" Camilla lifted her chin, her gaze full of superiority. "Do you think a few whispers from the commoners can overthrow me? I have ordered everything wiped clean. There will be no evidence, no articles whatsoever. There is only me and my glory." Anne didn't bother to retort to such arrogance. She merely looked at Camilla with the pitying eyes of someone holding the trump card. Anne knew full well the video had been distributed. All of Camilla's attempts to cover it up were now as futile as trying to hide an elephant behind a twig. Anne stepped back, yielding the way. Smug, thinking she had won the verbal spar, Camilla flicked her skirt and confidently walked past Anne, pushing open the backstage door. Her royal guards immediately formed two lines, escorting her toward the path leading to the main podium. Camilla held her head high, ready to receive the thunderous applause. She was taking her final steps straight into a trap that had already been set. The event's main auditorium was vast, brilliantly illuminated by hundreds of crystal chandeliers. Over 500 guests, including politicians, major sponsors, NGO representatives, and the media, had filled the rows of seats. Soft music played in the background, setting the stage for the most anticipated appearance. The host grandly announced Camilla's name. From behind the wings, she emerged with a majestic demeanor. A radiant, well-rehearsed smile graced her lips. She waved to the crowd, taking slow, powerful steps toward the oak podium positioned dead center on the stage. But something unusual was happening. Camilla stepped up to the podium, set down her folder, and looked out over the audience. Instead of the enthusiastic applause scripted in her mind, she was met with a terrifying silence. Out of the hundreds of people sitting below, not a single one clapped. They weren't looking at her. Everyone was engrossed in their glowing phone screens. A murmur rose from the left corner of the auditorium. Then it spread to the right. It was not admiration, but the sound of suppressed outrage. Suddenly, from the second row of VIP seats, a prominent sponsor abruptly stood up. Without a word, he simply held his phone straight up toward the podium. His phone screen was turned to maximum brightness. From the device's tiny speaker, a sound rang out, swallowed by the vast space, yet incredibly sharp. "I was not born to endure this. It's utterly filthy." Camilla's own shrill, disgusted voice played out. At that moment, dozens of others stood up in unison, holding their phones high. The secretly recorded video of her turning her back on Little Pearl had spread to everyone in the hall. Dozens of phones simultaneously replayed that derogatory sound, creating a symphony of humiliation echoing back onto the stage. Camilla's face completely drained of color. Her flawless makeup seemed to crack. She stood paralyzed, her hands gripping the edges of the podium so tightly her knuckles turned white. She frantically looked down at the press rows, hoping to find support. But an array of camera lenses were pointed squarely at her, flashes firing relentlessly, perfectly capturing her extreme panic. The crowd's outrage officially exploded. Loud shouts of criticism began to ring out. "Get down! Hypocrite! Don't touch that podium!" The auditorium descended into chaos. A few angry individuals crumpled their event programs and hurled them straight onto the stage. White pieces of paper fluttered down, landing right at Camilla's feet. Camilla trembled, retreating behind the podium. Panicked, she looked for rescue from her royal guards, but the guards were blocked by the fury of hundreds of people unable to advance. Right at that worst possible moment, from the shadows of the wings, Princess Anne emerged. No bodyguards, no rush. Anne walked onto the stage, heading straight for Camilla. Anne's eyes were as cold as ice, holding not a shred of mercy. Anne didn't need to use violence. She merely reached out and decisively yanked the cable of the main microphone on the podium, completely cutting off Camilla's chance to speak. Then Anne leaned in, pointing a rigid finger toward the path leading down the fire escape stairs at the corner of the stage. The crowd below screamed louder and louder, forming a colossal, invisible pressure. Under the blinding glare of flashes, under hundreds of contemptuous stares, and the absolute coercion of Princess Anne, Camilla was forced to turn her back. No longer maintaining her majesty, her shoulders slumped as she took staggering steps down the stairs. Her silent retreat before tens of thousands of lenses was an indelible moment of public humiliation, marking the total collapse of an empire built on lies. The video didn't just stop at the St. Brigid Auditorium. In less than 2 hours, it had spread globally, igniting the worst media earthquake in royal history. Major newspapers simultaneously splashed it across their headlines, while social media boiled over in a wave of utter fury. Deep inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was thick with tension. In King Charles's private study, the heavy oak doors were tightly shut. Charles stood deep in thought, his back to the door, hands clasped tightly behind his back, staring out at the pitch-black courtyard. Camilla burst into the room, her silk dress disheveled, her hair a mess. She didn't stop screaming, blaming everything and everyone. She criticized the organizers for intentionally trapping her in a filthy environment, blamed the security team's lack of professionalism, and even blasted Anne for failing to prevent the incident. "They're trying to destroy me. You must use all your resources to squash that video immediately." Camilla approached, aggressively yanking Charles's arm. Charles slowly turned around. His eyes were bloodshot, carrying an unprecedented, icy resolve. He shoved Camilla's hand away, stepping back to create distance. There was no appeasement or compromise. Charles raised his right arm, giving a signal. The study door swung open. 4 towering royal guards marched in, followed by 2 servants carrying black cardboard boxes. Without a word, they headed straight for Camilla's personal safe positioned in the corner of the room. Their actions were swift and cold. They opened the safe, roughly pulling out all the velvet boxes containing royal jewels, exclusive access passes, and any documents bearing the royal seal. "What do you think you're doing? Stop! I am the master here!" Camilla panicked, lunging forward to snatch back a diamond jewelry box, but a guard easily raised his muscular arm to block her, shoving her backward. Charles stood watching the scene, his voice ringing out like iron. "The protection is over. You no longer hold any authority, title, or privilege under this roof." From the hallway outside, Princess Catherine slowly walked in. Wearing a dark outfit, her features were terrifyingly calm. Catherine breezed past Camilla, not bothering to care about the hateful glare pinned on her. She stopped in front of Charles, then turned slightly to face the one who was being stripped of everything. Catherine looked straight into Camilla's eyes, delivering the final, fatal blow. "The monarchy does not exist to shun the pain of others. Your cruelty has passed judgment upon yourself." Without giving Camilla a chance to react, Charles approached his desk. He picked up the telephone receiver and dialed the director of St. Brigid's Orphanage directly. Right in front of Camilla's eyes, the king offered a sincere apology to little Pearl and the orphanage's management. With that act, he officially drew a line in the sand, completely severing all ties between the royal family and the woman standing before him. 15 minutes later, the decree of exile was executed. Outside the palace's pitch-black iron gates, the cold wind howled in gusts. There was no motorcade, no red carpet, no bodyguards holding umbrellas. There was only a shabby, unmarked taxi parked by the curb. Camilla was escorted all the way to the gates by 2 royal guards. She was not allowed to take any valuables with her, save for a battered suitcase containing her personal clothes. She stood in the dead of night, hair disheveled, shivering in the biting wind. The moment the iron gates slammed shut behind her, dozens of paparazzi swarmed out from the shadows. Camera flashes popped relentlessly, strobing like machine gun fire, perfectly capturing the rock bottom of someone who once held supreme power. Camilla hastily raised her hands to shield her face, ducking her head to dive into the back seat of the taxi. The car rolled away, plunging into the darkness, carrying away a person who had lost everything: honor, power, and her place. The ruthless punishment was complete. There was no room for mercy. The moment Princess Catherine knelt to protect little Pearl proved that she was the true heart of the monarchy. After this shocking event, do you expect that public support will help William and Kate's position become increasingly solidified? And who knows, might we even hope the couple will welcome a 4th little angel to mark a new era full of love? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.